Welcome, I'm Cristina Linhares. I'm a manager of Spectrum, Orbits and Broadcasting, Anatel, the telecommunications regulatory agency in Brazil. And I'm pleased to welcome you to the 11th of the GVF acclaimed webinars organized in association with Satellites Evolution and with the kind support of Intelsat. By the way, Intelsat has the largest fleet here in Brazil, and it has a long history with us. With us, we have 4 great panelists, and I would like to present Hazan Moakit. He is Vice President of Spectrum Strategy in Intelsat. Hazan Moakit is responsible for shaping Intelsat's strategic long-term positioning in the marketplace. In his role, he works closely with the company's business development, asset management, and innovation teams to analyze and identify emerging growth opportunities for Intelsat. Annelisa Faria and Silva, she is head of technical regulatory affairs in Global. She has 20 years of experience in the media sector and built a career associated with the digitization of the over-the-air television and the future of the media business. Frank Miniski, he is head of media and broadcasting in Semtech. Frank is telecommunications technologist with over 20 years experience in ICT sector, spanning across multiple disciplines, including over 10 years in senior management. And also Adrian Gonzalez, he's senior spectrum engineer in Hispasat. He is an electronic and communications engineer with a master's degree in communications. He works for Hispasat, where for more than 10 years he has been working as a spectrum engineer. I will give a brief introduction regarding what is going on in Brazil and, in my view, what is going on in our region in the C-band. So, in Brazil, we expect to have one of the largest spectrum release to the markets with action scheduled for the first half of 2021, with bands in the 700 MHz, 2.3 GHz, and 3.5 GHz, and 26 GHz as well. Regarding the C-bands, the boards will decide if the auction will be from 3.3 to 3.6 GHz or 3.3 to 3.7 GHz. If we're going to have private networks with low power base stations operating in 3.7 to 3.8 GHz, assuring protection of current and future F stations in these bands. And if TVRO users will migrate to KU band or a mitigation technique replacing LNBF will be implemented with TVRO channels rearranged to operate from 3.8 to 4.2 GHz band, leaving a 100 MHz guard band from TVRO channels and commercial public IMT networks. In our regions, we see that recently FCC approved spectrum redeployment in the C-band. The location costs of current users would be covered. New satellites will need to be launched and filters will need to be placed on Earth stations. Additionally, satellite operators would have the opportunity to receive accelerated relocation payments if they are able to clear the lower portion of the C-bands on an accelerated timeline. The accelerated payments may reach $9.7 billion. For WRC 23, we see that agenda item 1.2 will treat the band 3.3 to 3.4 GHz for regions 1 and 2, and 3.6 to 3.8 GHz for region 2, for possible identification for IMT or amending footnotes. Well, let's start. I would like to hear from you your view if what is going on in US, that is the 5G advanced up to 3980 megahertz, and FSS from 4 to 4.2 gigahertz with a 20 megahertz guard band can be extrapolated to other countries. So, in other words, the US is about to launch a much publicized auction of a portion of the C-band. Does an auction make sense in other countries within regions 1 and 2? And if not, why? So I would like to start with Hazan.
Thank you. Thank you, Agostinho. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your introduction. The short answer is no, we don't believe so. And in my view, one size does not fit all. Every region is different. I mean, when you look specifically at the U.S. Process of what happened, you need to look at the starting point, what the spectrum allocations were. One key differentiator in the U.S. is that they did not have, or the FCC did not have access to the or unencumbered access to the 3.4 to 3.7 gigahertz band. So that band in the US was used by the federal government. It was later on, a portion of it was open to what the FCC calls CBRS, which is a much watered down use of the band, enable maximum 1 watt or 2 watt transmitters. So when they wanted to deploy mobile in mid-band spectrum, they had to look at the satellite spectrum, and that's what kind of what forced the dialogue to go in that direction. Also, the nature of usage in C-band in the U.S. is very different. It is largely B2B. There's no B2C. The number of the Earth station is known. It's primarily commercial companies that use it. So the environment is quite different. So the arc in the U.S. is also quite big. You have a large geostationary arc that covers the U.S., many satellites. So the dynamics are different. You look at other regions when there's a high use of B2C. If the country has access to other parts of mid-band spectrum, like 3.3 to 3.7, you have alternatives. What you need to look at is that in the U.S., the amount of spectrum that was released is only 280 megahertz. So don't be bogged down with the exact frequency range. Look at the amount. So if they release 280 megahertz, you can do the same in 3.3 to 3.6 or 3.3 to 3.7. So there's no need to copy with the U.S. Now, there are certain elements that we can copy from the U.S. The recognition that there's a need for guard band, the recognition for how protection, in that you need to protect FSS Earth stations, that you cannot introduce 5G into the same space with satellites and not do anything. So I think there was a lot of things that we can learn. The incentive framework that the FCC created, I think these are all good things that we can look at, but we cannot just export it in one piece and try to impose it on others. So.
Thank you, Hazen. Good view. I would like to hear from our South African colleague. Frank, what's your view?
Thank you, Konstantin. Greetings to everyone. Yes, I'd like to agree with Hazim. It cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. I mean, I would definitely give a perspective for Africa. One of the biggest challenges we have in Africa is coverage, over and above capacity. So C-band is ideally suited to, provide a global coverage, if I can say, on the African continent. And also, there's huge reliance on C-band services for broadcasting services, both contribution and also for business enterprise services for VSAT. So definitely Africa will have to take a very careful approach in how we would then, implement the allocation of C-band spectrum for IMT services. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to hear from Annelisa that has a larger experience with broadcasting, including the utilization of the C-band to spread the signal all over Brazil. So Annelisa, please, your view.
Greetings to everybody in the audience and to my colleagues of this panel. Maybe I have a different view from the previous speakers. I think this idea of expanding the frequency for the 5G services and shrinking the C-band is something that we can see in many regions. Maybe not the exactly frequency ranges, but the concept itself is something that is being discussed in many regions. Including in Brazil, there is already public documents stating that this is something that we will see in the public auction in our country. So I think this could be a worldwide or regional movement in shrinking the capacity of the C-band. I have to agree with Flink because in South America, we have similar needs for usage of C-band for broadcasting. But my view on the development of 5G services and its increasing demands for more spectrum has a historical reason to believe that. And this is really what happened when we analyze the movement on and the deployment of 4G on the UHF, especially when we look at the 700 megahertz band and how it was discussed and how it was assigned and shared between terrestrial broadcasting and mobile services. I think the way we are discussing and the potential we have on the technology is the same that we have seen in the UHF band, is the same process that we will see now in the C band. I think this panel has a lot to discuss on how this needs to be done, and certainly different regions have different needs and different usages for the C band. So the solution for sharing the spectrum and for keeping services, existing services on the band may be different, but I have no doubt that the available spectrum for C-band will diminish in the short term.
Thank you, Anna. And before I give the floor to Adrian, I would like to remind our public that if you have any question or if you would like some clarifications on specific view, please send it by the Q&A. Do not send by the chat, send by the Q&A. So Adrian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Agostinho, and thank you for inviting me and Hispasa to participate in this great panel. To complement my colleagues, I just wanted to remind that the C-band continues being really important, especially in region 2, where there is a lot of rain for satellite operators. There are some services that we can only provide in C-band. But having said that, it's up to every country how to decide on the use of their spectrum. And if, for example, they decide to use part of the C-band spectrum for 5G, what is important is to establish rigorous processes that on one hand allow to continue FSS or satellite operators continue providing the same services and new services, and on the other hand also consider to fairly compensate those satellite operators for the investment that they have done. Otherwise, they would be discouraging the investment, and we know the bad consequences of that. And about the question of if the model can be exactly extrapolated, I don't think so. Every country has its own particularities and necessities, and what they have to do is first analyze which is the real demand of 5G in C-band, which is the FSS deployment in that band, what would be the cost to migrate and the impact, and then decide if it worth to do it or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Yes, in my view, it's really a battle. Here in Brazil, the C-band is really important. We have 7 Brazilian satellites operating C-band and more than 30 satellites operating C-band. It is very important for us. We have a coastal area that is very huge, and we have the C-band operation also to platforms of oil. So the C-band has a differential characteristics from KU or KA band. So what is my position internally in Anatel is that the radio regs should be respected in terms of allocation. Let's try to avoid use the provision 4.4 that we can deploy anything in our country. It may be different from the radio regs, but we cannot interfere in other countries. And I do prefer to follow radio regs. Let's work to, in case additional spectrum is necessary for mobile, for IMT. Let's work during WRC, try to have a consensus building and have the allocation instead of each country decides what to do or not to do. At least this is my view. So let's keep in with our discussion, and I would like to hear from Frank his view regarding the era of the over-the-top video, mobile telephony, and the utilization of the other bands to support the explosive growth in data. What uses remain for the C-bands? So what's going on for the future of C-bands? Frank?
Yes, thank you, Agostino. Yes, indeed. I mean, over-the-top players have brought some really much needed innovation within the ecosystem. However, as I had outlined earlier, in other parts of the world, we have problems when it comes to coverage. And as a result, linear services still play a big role on the African continent. I mean, I can share some perspective in terms of studies that have been done by organizations like GSMA. For example, on the African continent, mobile subscriber penetration is just over 45%. It is estimated that by 2025 only, 3G services will account for about 60% of all mobile connections. And as well as currently, as things stand, over 50% of connections are still on 2G. Now, that alone just shows a very important aspect that there is still a gap when it comes to connectivity. Now, based on that, this is where C-band is still a powerful medium in Africa. Now, if I take South Africa alone and I look at it from a broadcasting perspective, all our distribution links that Centec is operating are handled on C-band services. So we are providing primary services on C-band and secondary services on Ku-band. I mean, this further emphasizes the challenge that we have from a connectivity perspective in terms of the dynamics in the country in terms of access to infrastructure. And this is generally the challenge on the African continent. So this alone just shows the importance of C-band services in the near future, and hence, our approach and feeling is still that you cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach. Each country will have to look at its own dynamics and decide on how best to allocate the much-needed spectrum for IMT services. I mean, that does not mean we do not support, the growth of connectivity through IMT. However, we are saying C-band still plays a major role in other parts of the world for broadcasting, as I have said, for VSAT services in other countries. They're still using access to education and health through VSAT that is delivered on C-band. So as much as the debate is vibrant around the need for more capacity on IMT to deliver video services in 5G, however, some other countries are still lag behind, and C-band, is a big driver of delivery of linear services. That is my view, Agostina. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So, Annalisa, could you comment on it as you come from? What are the use cases you imagine for the C-band? And I would like to say that if Hazen or Adrian or any other panelist is wishing to comment on any question, please raise your hands that I will give you the floor just after Annalisa or other panelists. Thank you. Annalisa, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad to hear Frank's comments, because C-band is still the core of the professional media distribution worldwide, but mostly in countries of continental size, such as Brazil. So this is really something that we rely on the availability of C-band because of the climate, as Adrian mentioned. But in Brazil, we have a unique situation because it goes beyond the professional usage. We have a free-to-air C-band distribution where the signal is distributed direct to home. So it's very similar to the normal DTH service in KU band, but it's free. So it reaches the entire nation, including rural areas where terrestrial broadcasting does not reach. And it is really a very powerful distribution because it reaches over 20 million households as of the statistics in 2018. So this is because there are many isolated areas where satellite distribution is the only viable way to reach these citizens. So this said, you can see the dimension, the C-band and the role it plays in our country.
Thank you, Ana. So
yeah, I mean, I cannot agree more with the two previous speakers because you know, Intelsat as the largest C-band operator, we do know that C-band remains to be the backbone, the workhorse of media distribution around the world. And however, I would also like to highlight that this is also changing a little bit because now we are building satellites with digital channelizers. So we are improving the efficiency of C-band. We are building C-band satellites with multi-spots to provide cellular backhauls, to do other things, to enable the 5G services that you know, the mobile community talks about. So just wanted to add that.
yes, for sure. I think that in these 5G worlds, the satellite will play a very important role integrating with the 5G, where it's very difficult to reach with optical fiber. So for sure, the satellites, including the C-band satellites, will have its position in this 5G ecosystem. So Adrian, would you like to present your view or to?
No, I agree totally 100% with my colleagues. It's going to be, especially when it comes to 5G, it will even continue being a key service. And as I said before, especially in those places where there is a lot of rain and the service require a very high availability. There is no other way to provide those services than in C-band.
Okay, very good. So let's talk a little bit about WRC. So for WRC 23, Adrian, I would like to hear from you. What's your view regarding the practical difference of what is being studied for Radio 1 and Radio 2 in the C-bands?
Okay, thanks for the question. In Region 1, I will focus on Europe, and Hassan can comment later the situation on Africa or Flame that they know better than I do. In Europe, the impact of the studies are not going to be significant at all because in Europe there is already a European decision, and the band is already allocated and used for mobile services. So in Europe, there's not going to be impact, but I totally agree with your comment before, but for Region 2, it's going to be key the results of the ITU conference, or should be at least, because what we are seeing is many public consultations of different countries in Region 2 showing interest to allocate part of the C-band for 5G. And we have concerns because in the spirit of harmonization, the ideal solution would be to wait until the conference and have the results, or at least follow the results of the studies, because in the ITU is the perfect place to make the studies and have solutions. And our concerns are that we don't go in the harmonization and every country implements different solutions it will be crazy. And in my opinion, harmonization will help us, the satellite operators, but will also help us, the mobile operators. Harmonization is in the benefit for everybody.
Thank you, Adrian. Hazem, would you like
Thank
to
you.
hear?
Sure. So it kind of just goes back to the point about harmonization and what to me, in my opinion, what is harmonization? Harmonization means that agreeing to the extent that we can all agree on something, you know, that it cannot be forced. Harmonization, you cannot force a region to harmonize if they're not moving at the same speed. It's a common denominator between countries to say, okay, this is what we can all agree upon. Above that, then there are differences. So when you look at region 1, you know, you got to remember first that the mobile is secondary in region 1 in that band. So the starting point is that they're secondary, they're trying to elevate it to mobile. But the key thing here is that region 1 is quite large. You have the European bloc in the north, which basically it's a mini ITU. They do their own thing within the CEPT, so they're really less concerned about this. Then you have the North African countries, which are part of the ASMG, part of the Arab countries. Again, they are a bloc. They are another bloc, yet within a part of another bloc that is also, you know, has a less reliance on C-band. So they have their own views. Then you have Sub-Saharan Africa, and within Sub-Saharan Africa, you have different blocs. So you have a region that is really moving at different speeds and has different imperatives and different priorities. So to me, this is a differentiator. I mean, it tells you that the reason that they didn't go for IMT is that there are different views, and they just, there's no consensus on the need to do so. You look at region 2, the situation is a little different. Region 2, again, you have regional divisions. You have the northern bloc and the southern bloc, and then you have, you know, administrations with very large populations that tend to, you know, drive the dialogue. So and the penetration of mobile service in region 2 is also different. So they are at a different stage vis-a-vis region 1. So I think this is how you look at it in my perspective. So there are subtleties between the regions, and this is, you know, it's a nuanced approach to how you look at it.
Thank you, Hazem. I would like to hear Frank and then Annelisa to present the view of Africa, and from Anna, that has also a large experience in WRC.
Yeah.
Frank, please.
Thank you, Agostino. Yes, indeed. I mean, the WRC agenda item 1.2 and 1.3 are big, and there will be a huge impact on the African continent, as I have outlined earlier. And we are indeed following it closely. I tend to agree with Adrian that, you know, as much as there are those complexities as outlined by Hazem, harmonization would be the way to go. And I think from an African bloc, we're working tirelessly through the ATU to ensure that we can adopt, you know, a position that benefits almost all of us on this issue. Thank you, Agustin.
Thank you. Anna?
Well, actually, I think much has already been said on the different speed and actions that are taken in different regions. What I have to add to that is that Brazilian broadcasters are really very concerned that this new terrestrial uses in C-band downlink can cause significant harm or disruption into existing satellite users. So we have expressed that concern several times in WRC and to our regulators, to Anatel, right? And I think this principle of no harm to the existing services, in this case, the broadcasting ecosystem, and must be the core of any regulation, and for WRC and for the spectrum allocation. So this principle goes beyond technical compatibility and assignments and allotments and everything. And this spectrum that is historically has been used by broadcasters for this delivery and distribution of content and services should be taken care of.
Thank you, Ana. I would like to remind again the public, please send questions. For sure you have some doubts or some good questions to present here to our great panelists. And I would like to thank again Intelsat for sponsoring these events. Regarding this theme, I was heading the Brazilian delegation, WRC 15, WRC 19, and I'm responsible for the Brazilian preparation for WRC 23. And what I saw in WRC 19 was completely a split in the regions. And we can see that for the agenda items for WRC 23, there are many topics that are related only to specific regions. And we always talk, oh, let's try to harmonize worldwide. But for example, there are many specific bands, agenda items specifically for one region. And I think that this should not be the spirit of ITU of the WRC, but this is what's going on. And I have some concerns. I don't know if maybe in 20 years that ITU will be basically a satellite discussion, because we see that the IMT sector is trying to push to work in 3GPP and establish a commercial solution, and ITU will come after these decisions. So I'm really concerned what will happen in maybe in 20 years in the future. But let's see, and let's try to use WRC and ITU as our reference. And I hope that other countries think in the same way as Brazil think this is the best way to work. So I have another question that I would like to address to Annelisa. For those countries looking to make C-band frequencies available for IMT, they are motivated to promote 5G. Is this promise of 5G something you believe in? And if so, when will the promise be realized?
Thank you, Agostinho. I really appreciate this question being made to an outsider, right? Yes, we trust 5G is really a powerful set of tools with such a diverse range of usages and across industries. So this is also true for our broadcasters. No? So we are to leverage our production with this high data, extended mobility, low latency, and all these promises. So we are confident that this technology will benefit our production, certainly. And will make our delivery to end users more attractive, more appealing, with more features. So this is also a platform that broadcasters will certainly learn to use and to deliver. But what disturbs me most is this service really does not substitute current use of C-band, because what we have now is professional distribution for large number of remote end users. And in that case, and we are talking about a free service. So this is really what concerns me. And of course, broadcasters will make use of this new technology, but it is not a substitute for the current use of the existing band.
Thank you, Adrian. Could you present your view?
Yes, thank you. In my view, 5G is going to be important for satellite operators, and we know that we are going to be part of it. And an example of that is that the satellite industry is involved in defining the 5G standard. With respect to if the 5G is what we have now, I personally believe that the network of networks that we have been promised, that is going to connect everything, machines, animals, cars, people, we don't have it yet. We are in the way to have it, and it will take some years to become a reality. It will become a reality, but it will take some years from now. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like to know if Hazen or Flank would like to complement.
I mean, I would like if to make a couple of comments, if possible. So I think one key question in this discussion about IMT is to go back and look at the economics, and to take. I mean, you know, something that Flank said before about the statistics about from GSMA. So in sub-Saharan Africa in 2025, 85% of all connections are still going to be 2G, 3G. In Latin America right now, 4G accounts only for 50% of all connections. And by 2025, it will be 67%. So you look at this and you wonder, well, why are they not deploying? I mean, isn't this the best and the greatest? But then you look under the hood and you look at the reasons, and there's two issues. There's the issue of coverage, that they're not building to cover people, and there's an issue of affordability. Okay, meaning that the service is not affordable to people. So yes, you can have a very high-end service, a Rolls-Royce of service, if you will, but if it's not affordable, if people are still relying on 2G phones because they are inexpensive, you need to factor that into consideration, the economics of it. That means, in other words, that the business case is not closing for the mobile industry. When you also factor in the densification that is required on the ground, I mean, it is as expensive as it is right now to build towers and to put fiber to all these towers to feed the base stations. And now when you go to higher frequencies, like in the mid-band spectrum, you need to densify 3 times to 10 times, depending on the situation. And that's going to even increase the cost even more. This is going to make the business case more difficult. So we need to take that into account. I mean, there's this very high promise, which we all love and we all want, but the reality is that it's not going to be there. It's somewhere in between, right? So we have to take that into consideration. We should not undermine existing services, and services that we know that contribute to the economies of the countries, and then take them away and give them to something that still has some ways to go. Again, we're not against 5G. We are for 5G, but we have to be balanced. This issue, and I'm sorry to go on, but this issue of where the mobile industry says, oh, we do need 100 megahertz per carrier to make this work. This is nonsense. I mean, this has been proven. There was a study by Ofcom saying you achieve most of the economics or the benefit, the economics benefits of 5G in the first 40 megahertz of spectrum. So this notion that everybody needs to get 100 megahertz is simply an anchor. They shoot high, try to get as much as you get, and then we'll think about it later. So again, a balanced approach is really important to moderate these high expectations.
Thank you. Frank, I'm not sure if you raise your hand, but anyway, if you would like to present your view, please feel free. Would like to hear from our South African colleague.
Yes, thank you, Agostino. I think same approach as well, and same sentiments. I mean, like I said before, in Africa, we have a coverage problem. In South Africa, the dynamics are also the same. And where I see the power of 5G, initially it will be in small pockets, especially private networks when we talk about the internet of everything. So the approach, as my colleague Adrian has said, it will take a bit of time for us to get to the promised land, you know. However, we are excited about what 5G is bringing. We do need those services, the innovation behind, you know, service offering and applications. However, it's not going to be a big bang approach, and as a result, it will take time. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that we have some questions, and I see that my good friend Paulo Balduino wrote for us. Firstly, he comments about the importance of C-band for the broadcast industry in Brazil. And he also comments, he is asking if, well, I will read it. In addition to the US, other administrations have reallocated the C-band spectrum from FSS to IMT. While I am sure you do not want more countries to do so, don't you think more countries will follow the leads of the US and other countries? So maybe Hazen and Adrian could present your view once you are representing the satellite operators and to have a good feeling of what is going on in each country.
I can, Adrian, do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Go you first and I will comment it later.
Sure. So thank you. Well, I mean, the situation around the world is different. I mean, it's like we said, you harmonize to the extent possible, but then countries start to look at what is my situation. I mean, you look at countries like Korea and Japan, right? It makes sense for them. They don't rely on C-band a lot, right? The C-band is only for teleports, so it makes sense for them to say, I'm going to use it for mobile. You look at other countries, for example, Indonesia and India. They are so much vested in C-band FSS that you know, they are not going to move away from it, at least not for the foreseeable future. They have large populations and they're staying there. Europe is a different situation. Africa is different. South America is different. So I think just to say that we're going to take, you know, follow what others are doing is, I mean, you can learn from it. You can take certain elements of it, but you don't have to follow it all the way. I mean, I think this is how we should look at this, but it's not like keeping up with the Joneses. You know, if everybody's doing it, we should do it too. It's only if it suits us, if it suits the country, if it suits the economic situation, then it should be done.
I agree with Hassem, and he has explained very well the particularities of United States. And I agree with the person who has made the question that it's true that United States has a lot of influence for everything in the world. But as in my initial intervention, what countries have to do is to carefully analyze which are the real needs and the particularities of their country, the necessity, the real necessity of C-band for 5G, and what's the deployment of FSS, and what would be the impact. And when you have done a careful analysis, and when all the studies have been done and everything, then take the appropriate decisions and decide if it compensates or not. But not just because the biggest country economically in the world has done it, just follow and do it. Just take decisions with calm and good analysis.
Anna, please.
Yes, thank you. When we talk about the unique situation of each country and each region in the world, is it up to me to once again to emphasize the unique situation we have in Brazil? Because the need for the C-band in our country is to build an ecosystem of different content providers that use the band to offer a DTH service that is free to air to the nationwide coverage. So in that case, when parts of the band or large portions of the band are used for other services, this may disrupt the whole ecosystem and make it impossible to sustain such a distribution, or make it less appeal to the end user, because only few content will now be available to users that are already used to that kind of availability of content.
Thank you. Paulo Balduino is asking to the panelists if the panelists believe that for Brazil, the only chance to have a final and definite solution for TVRO will be migrating to KU bands. That is, migrating is not a wish, but it's a need imposed by the ongoing occupancy of the C-band by IMT. So I will start with Ana. Once Ana knows better the situation of Brazil, and anyone, Hazen also has a good experience with Brazil, and Adrian works for Spasat, and Sparsat has Spamar partially, so I believe that he also knows the situation in Brazil. And Frank, if we wish, please feel free, because maybe in Africa you have some similarities with Brazil. So Ana, what's your view?
Thank you, Agostinho. Yeah, well, the reason why there is such a big discussion in Brazil regarding the C-band is really because of 20 million households relying on C-band DTH service. This is some unique situation in the country. And when parts of the C-band are not available to the continuation of such services, it is really hard for the user to continue seeing that distribution as appealing to him. And because there is no such platform that can reach this amount of households in the country, we are really struggling to find another alternative to present in such a challenging situation. We are really very concerned about harmful interference from those terrestrial IMT services, and what is required to provide sharing without disrupting existing users. We may talk here about guard interval, guard band, and we may talk about putting filters. And this is not a solution for small home reception. We cannot control where they are to provide distance separation. They are really very tiny and mechanical fragile and very low entry products for a population that is very sensitive to cost. So if you provide them a solution with a very complicated, very sophisticated filter with an LNBF that is really astonishing in terms of performance, but costs 10 times the price, or even 5 times the prices in large scale, it means that the value proposition for this population is really broken, is really false. They are putting their money to access information in other services, in other way, because they cannot afford a solution that costs this much for the same service. It's costing more to them because we are introducing new technology for other purpose, and not because we are offering more quality or we are offering better services. So this is really the difficult for when we look from the perspective of the end users in case of this C-band. So what we're really talking is how we manage to put in place a solution to preserve this ecosystem, and we are, so that's why we are really in-depth analyzing the migration of this whole service to a very similar DDH service that exists around the world in KU band, just that it happens to be a free-to-air service.
Hazen?
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, I fully agree. It really comes down to economics. I mean, first, we don't build C-band satellites because it's a hobby and we build them just to put them there. We build them because there are services that are being provided. So we'll continue to build them, you know, and provide services for as long as there's a need, and we are satisfying a need and we are providing a service, right? Now, the question or the issue that Anna brought up is an excellent one. There is a different profile usage in different countries. When you have a B2C situation, when you have consumers using C-band dishes, right, and you want to migrate them to KU-band as proposed by Paulo, from a concept standpoint, but who's going to pay for this? You know, what type of construct can we have to hold on a second, there's something ringing. So what kind of constructs can we put it in place to make sure that this would work? I mean, how would the economics flow from one party to another to enable this such migration?
Thank you. Adrian?
Thank you. Annalisa has explained very well the special situation in Brazil. I mean, we are talking of millions of houses with TVR installations in C-band. But at the same time, if we consider to install filters on them, it's a difficult decision on we migrate now to KU since we have to install filters if we allocate part of the C-band for 5G, or we install those filters and we continue relying on the C-band. So I think that you have a difficult task to decide as Anatel, but KU is a possibility that there is, I mean, it's there, and it's going to be a difficult decision for sure.
Thank you, Adrian. Frank, please go on.
Yes, thank you, Agostino. I think I also needed to bring another aspect why C-band. I mean, reliability of C-band is so far unparalleled. So as much as there may be options to be considered in KU band and possibly in KA band and other low Earth orbiting services, unfortunately for now, C-band has proven to be very reliable in terms of maintaining a high service level. And as a result, you know, whatever solution you want to propose as an alternative will have to at the least match up the performance of C-band services. And I mean, I cannot overemphasize the issue around coverage. I mean, we have a coverage problem on the African continent and in South Africa as well. And as a result, you know, whatever solution you bring, the economics of it will have to be considered over and above, you know, performance-related issues, as I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the same line of sharing the compatibility, I have one question that I would like to hear from Hazen and Adrian once they represent the satellite operators. There are various technical solutions in the form of specialized products. Exist to block or prevent interference from 5G base stations in proximity to C-band ground terminals. What is the general industry view of the pros and cons of these technical approaches? Are they, in fact, real solutions? Does their use have any regulatory angles? What about the guard band needed to protect FSS from IMT? Hazen, I would like to hear from you first.
Well, thank you. As you can imagine, this is a complex problem because you have to first look at your starting point and what is it that you're trying to achieve. I think, in my view, the starting point is that what type of environment do you want to be in? If you have, like what Anna was mentioning, if you have a B2C situation, you have a large population of TVROs that are used by consumers. There's simply no way that you know where they are. And if your objective is to continue to protect those, then the solutions or the things that you have to do to protect this population are very different from if you have a B2B situation where the earth stations are well known and documented and professionally installed. So you have to define your destination first, your objective. What are you trying to do? So in the B2B situation, you can optimize the solution. You can, if you start with the point that you know where the earth stations are, and you have access to, basically it's not a cost issue to add a $300 filter. You can optimize, you can minimize the guard band, you can define power levels, and you can make it work, and then that would be a way forward. And this is, for example, why we were able to optimize the guard band in the U.S. to 20 megahertz by using very, very excellent filters, and then also to put some PFD restrictions that the base stations have to implement in the direction of the earth station. You look at another situation like Hong Kong. Hong Kong, they have a situation similar to Brazil where they have a lot of consumer terminals. And then the size of the guard band that they thought about there is 100 megahertz, and that's because the situation is different. So I think those are the kind of things you have to grapple with. I mean, we are engineers. You can always find a solution to solve a problem. It's whether it's economically viable on the scale that you're looking at. So I think technically, yeah, there is a solution, but how can you implement it? Is it economically viable? Is it inexpensive? And can you manage it? So.
Thank you, Adrian. You have the floor.
Yeah, just to add a few more things. Those solutions have a regulatory angle. For example, I think it's commonly accepted that in the same exact band, it cannot be shared, the FSS and the mobile service, or at least only in very specific cases. And in adjacent bands, the solutions that we trust are the traditional solutions. There are two interference effects that has to be avoided coming from 5G into the FSS. One is the direct interference of the out-of-band emissions of 5G. So a regulatory solution, out-of-band emission limits has to be defined and well-defined, and a guard band helps to the 5G to meet those limits. And the other source of interference that has to be prevented is the overdrive of the low-no amplifier. And to do that, again, traditional solutions define in-band limits for 5G, a guard band, and define and install filters in the earth stations. And that guard band will help or will make that the filter can do their work and reject the band. So traditional solutions are those that we trust.
So Agostinho, just to kind of to touch upon the regulatory element. So I think this is where the regulators come into play. If a 5G service is introduced in a band next to satellite, like we talked, those solutions involve costs, and those costs cannot be assumed that the incumbent has to pay for these costs. This is where the regulator should step in and establish a framework for compensating these stations to be fitted with the proper equipment. I mean, I always say that introducing 5G, it's like trying to build a nightclub next to a nursery to house kids who want to sleep. So somehow you need to put a big wall and then soundproofing to make sure that the kids are not disturbed. So I think this is how I look at it. So thank you.
Thank you, Hazen. So in the last 60 minutes, we discussed about sharing the compatibility and some new possibilities for the C-bands. I would like to have more 15 minutes of all of you, because this panel is very, very good, very exciting. And I have that we still have more things to discuss. So I would like to have additional 15 minutes from everyone. And I would like to focus now about digital divides and the possibilities of the C-band. And I would like to hear from Annelisa in this context of continuing digital divides. Perhaps sometimes we tend to focus too much only on data type application related to frequency band alternatives, overlooking the bedrock importance of C-band for broadcast TV as some people's only access to any form of information. A most recent example was during the pandemic lockdown with schools closed and some countries' regions lessons over TV were the only way to reach all students. We really do need C-band, don't we? What's your view?
Certainly, yeah. We need the services that are on C-band. It's not that we need to have it in C-band, but the large geographic area that are very isolated rural areas in Brazil have this direct to the home broadcasting. It's required to reach those citizens. So they have this content as the only access they have to education, to entertainment. And this has proved vital during the pandemic, and it's vital to public information and to in emergency situations. And so it's really how they have access to information. It's the only platform that offers them free communication and promotes social inclusion, the national identity, and so it has a crucial role in society. So what we are talking here is really the existing service, not really how it's provided, because we understand there is a big threat, in a technical threat to the continuity of such services. And this is related to exactly what we were commenting on our previous question, how we coexist. There were mentions about guardband and filters and everything, but the challenge to make those functions available to millions of homes in order to provide continuity and availability of those services is really very challenging. So the economics of maintaining this service in C-band may not be, and this is really what is in discussion right now, may not be the best alternative, when together with the technical threat, we have the issue of the continued expansion of 5G in the C-band, shrinking the availability of band for other services. So yes, the service as it is vital to the community and to the citizens.
Thank you, Anna. Frank, what's your view?
Yes, thank you, Augustine. I'd like to reaffirm Anna's sentiments. Yes, C-band, the service is very important. Given the South African context, where I had said that the entire, broadcast platform for television and FM services, I need to emphasize, is fully dependent currently on C-band services. And probably our case may be unique in terms of the mitigation plans and strategies, for coexistence and co-sharing, because we have TVROs that are deployed and we know where they are deployed. However, I still maintain that it will be an economic issue from an investment perspective to for someone to outlay the capital required to make sure that those TVROs are protected from 5G services. However, the picture may not be the same, as in other African countries. For example, in Nigeria, it is estimated that there's about 10,000 plus VSAT terminals that are installed for education and health purposes. I mean, for such a deployment, obviously the cost will be prohibitive, and as a result, you know, it would require a different approach. But in short, C-band, yes, it is very important, and we do need it as things stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. We have some questions in the Q&A, so let's go there. I see there is an interesting question from Bruno Lara. He's asking, the 5G network, just like the 3G and 4G, have a very big problem in Africa related with coverage. But the use of low orbit satellites or balloons or similar solutions may solve this problem. Will it be possible that with those solutions, the C-band becomes obsolete? So a very strong question. Hazen, Adrian, or anyone that would like to talk about this very hot question? Hazen, you have the floor.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you probably may know, I mean, Intelsat is looking very closely at HAPS and what we can do. We're members in the HAPS Alliance. So, but I don't think these are, you know, necessarily, you know, that one was going to eliminate the other. I mean, I think those technologies are going to facilitate connectivity in remote areas, right? So it may improve it may make the business case close for providing services in overcoming the coverage issue, you know, because the problem with coverage is that to build towers to cover sparsely populated areas is not very cost effective. But if you can somehow find a solution that can bridge this gap, then, you know, you have a winner. But I don't think that this necessarily means that C-band becomes obsolete. I mean, I don't see the connection. I think when a service becomes obsolete, when it's no longer needed, and the question is that do we continue to need C-band right now as an FSS service? Yes, for the time, yeah, that continues to be the case. I don't see it changing. It's evolving, but I don't see it changing or suddenly disappearing. That we're no longer going to need C-band for satellites.
Adrian?
Regarding the hubs and the NGSO, to provide direct service of broadband to a huge amount of population, there is a problem with, for example, for NGSO, the terminals are expensive. I mean, they are not affordable to provide services, internet services right now. So we don't know if in the future the technology will evolve and the business plan will close. But we are exploring those possibilities too in Hispasat, and we are involved in projects. But the time to provide direct service of internet from NGSOs, for example, it hasn't come yet. I mean, we have to wait.
Okay, thank you. Well, one last question before we wrap up. So this question is related with the previous one of digital divides. So what about metrics? What about the value? So what metrics are being or can be used to determine or measure the social value of C-band services? That is, the non-financial terms, to benchmark the importance to remote communities, particularly where no other communications or information services are available to the underinvestment, rain attenuation, and etc. And I would like to hear from Frank his view.
Okay, thank you, Augustine. I think, yeah, this is a very interesting question. And in answering to that, I'd like to, recall what we had said earlier around the importance of access to information and for large communities, especially in Africa and in Brazil, as Anna has outlined in her remarks. you know, based on that, it is my view that access to information and education in some instances rather speaks to sustainable development. And as a result, I wouldn't really divorce this matrix from what countries do with matrices such as, you know, the IRIS matrix, where they're looking at investment versus value that it creates socially, and the whole sustainable development perspective. Because unfortunately, for a large number of communities, you know, they rely on broadcast content to get access to information. I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic, with the lockdowns that were instituted in most countries, you know, resulted in a huge uptake and reliance on, you know, broadcast information, where the governments were communicating with communities and instructing communities and educating communities in terms of what to do and what not to do. So as a result, in my view, you know, a matrix like IRIS rather, that speaks to investment, social benefits, and addresses the social development aspect of it would really be a critical metric to use. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazen. Oh, thank you, sorry. Frank, but I would like to hear from Hazen, his view on this topic of the social value of the C-band.
I mean, I think Frank touched on a really important element, you know, and I would like to add to it is the humanitarian work. There was a very interesting presentation by the United Nations during WRC about how much they rely on SATCOMs and on C-band for refugee problems, for humanitarian issues, for disasters. I mean, in a situation like this, what would you do if you don't have SATCOM, and if you don't have C-band, if you don't have coverage? You know, so it's almost, you have to stay cognizant of assigning a value. I mean, you cannot just look at the dollar sign as the only metric for saying this is important, this is unimportant. You know, so that's obviously the economics are important, but at the same time there's a social value, or you know, that you have to factor into consideration. When you see a disaster hits, the towers go down, there's no connectivity, the fiber is cut. Well, how can you get in? The only way you can get in through satellite. So there's no price on that. You know, you can't put a price on this ability to reach out people instantly if you have a problem like this.
Thank you very much. As we are reaching our closing time, I would like to thank all participants, all panelists. This was a great time. We see how important the C-band is for everyone. We saw different views from all panelists, and they have a great background, not only on satellite, but all telecommunications issues. And this brings a very rich discussion to the future of the telecommunications in the C-band, but what can be done if we have to move from C-band to other bands, or what will be the future of the C-band applications, the importance of the C-band due to the social value of the spectrum. Not everything is related with money. We need the service, and we need the service to be 100% present. As I mentioned, if something happens in that city, in that country, the satellite will still be there providing the service. So the satellite for sure has its importance in the context to keep the telecommunications working. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for being with us in this 1 hour and 50 minutes. I would like to say that the recording of this session will be available soon on the GVF website. Answers to the questions we did not manage to tackle during the last 1 hour and 50 minutes will be posted right next to the video. For future GVF webinars, visit gvf.org. The next webinar will explore the issues regional satellite operators face, the regional satellite operators voice, on 22 October at 3 p.m. UK time. Until then, goodbye for everyone, and keep safe.